Hey there. Welcome to Behind the Camera. My name's Greg Kaiser. I'm sure most of you already know me. If this is your first time visiting, stick around for a minute. You might find some interesting information, and also invite you to check out my other Behind the Cameras, which are mostly in blog form. And I use this forum pretty much to talk about things related to photography, but that aren't necessarily directly related to specific photos that I've taken or trips that I've been on. Uh, each month I cover something a little bit different. This month is something that I've been kind of pondering the idea of for pretty much the whole year. I usually have a list of these topics laid out and ready to go. And I've been really trying to figure out how I wanted to address this topic. And what we're going to talk about today is comparison. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this as a video format instead of a actual typewritten blog, because I'd be inclined to put pictures in if I was doing the blog entry. This way, there's some visual interest because, well, you get to see me talking with my hands, product of being a police officer for years. But I don't want my photos necessarily to be a part of what I'm talking about, because I think comparison is one of the biggest roadblocks that we put in our own way as photographers or as creatives. The reason that I say this is we are surrounded by visual input, whether you're online, on social media, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever. We're bombarded by images. And regardless of what kind of photography you are interested in, whether it's landscape, whether it's portraiture, whether it's fine art, whether, architectural, any of that, there is an abundance of pictures that we can look at. And it is human nature to compare. I've done it. You've done it. We've all done that. We've looked at the pictures and thought to ourselves, wow, that is just really awesome. And I want to be able to create something like that. And that's where comparison starts. Because if we fail to create what we have seen, we see ourselves as falling short of our own goals. And therein lies the problem, because we automatically compare ourselves to another photographer. And while that's not necessarily a problem, it becomes a problem if it keeps you from feeling like you're accomplishing something. So bear with me on this. I understand comparisons are going to happen and there's no way to avoid it. But I want us to start looking at comparison differently. When we see pictures that we really like, when we see photographers that we admire, when we see work that we want to emulate and be as good as, we don't need to compare our skills. We don't need to compare our location. These are unfair comparisons, honestly, because every photographer is different. We all think differently. We all read scenes differently. We all have a different mindset about how our pictures should look. We all have different backgrounds, and we certainly all live in different places. When I started out in landscape photography, like many landscape photographers, I looked a lot at Ansel Adams stuff. I don't live where Ansel Adams did. I don't have those landscapes available to me. So everything that I shot felt like it was falling short and wasn't arriving at that ultimate goal of being Ansel Adams-esque. And that put me in a bad frame of mind for a very long time. But that had nothing to do with me as a photographer or Ansel Adams as a photographer. That had to do with our locations. He's in a place that is very unlike North Carolina. or the surrounding areas in the southeast. I would have had to go and travel a lot to get to the areas to have a direct comparison. But there's even something beyond that. And I'm not saying that we need to be limited by where we are, because I've found fantastic subjects and photographs in Wilkes County, North Carolina, of all places. You won't see that on YouTube from any number of photographers, and the ones that come over from overseas and travel to the places in the U.S. to photograph and make videos. You're not going to see them come to Wilkes County. That's just the fact of the matter. I love it. It works great for my type of photography. Now, when I talk about my type of photography, I want you to think about your type of photography. Again, I didn't want my pictures in this, so we could leave it all in your own mind, because you, as a creative, as a photographer, already have in mind, number one, the images that you would like to create, and number two, the images that you have created, and the images that are special to you, that really stand out. You have all those in your mind. Think about those. Don't think about my pictures. My pictures are immaterial. When you compare yourself and your pictures to the work that you want to emulate and get close to, I want you to compare conditions. That's all I want you to focus on. I want you to look at what types of conditions these photographers are photographing in. Whether it be Ansel Adams, whether it be Galen Rawell, any number of, but just think about the ones that are important to you. Look at their pictures, not for subject matter, not even for composition. What about their pictures excites you? And that's probably going to be the conditions that they shoot in. It could be golden hour. It could be they have a certain type of mood because they like photographing in fog. Maybe they like direct, harsh sunlight. Maybe they like soft, overcast lighting from cloudy days. Think about those things. Those are the aspects of a photographer that you can incorporate successfully in your own photographs. It doesn't require specific areas, locations. It doesn't require specific knowledge or skill sets. We can all go out there and take a camera and dial in an ISO, a shutter speed, and an aperture. We can all figure out a composition that works for us. All those things are technical. Reading the landscape, reading the subject, and knowing the conditions, that is what really sets each photographer apart and gives them their own style. So when you see a photographer that you like, don't try to create the same pictures that they've done. Look at the conditions that they're photographing in, and then work with those types of conditions from a very early time, because when I first started in photography, waterfalls was something that I wanted to really get into photographing. So I figured out the conditions that were best for waterfalls, for how I liked them to be rendered. It was usually an overcast day, heavy clouds, kind of dim, even lighting. That worked great for my waterfalls. So every time there was a good cloudy day, I was out doing waterfalls, and I started to really enjoy working with that type of light. Those were the conditions that I grew up in photography working with, and to this day I still like those conditions because it makes lighting so much easier to work with and manipulate to my favor, as opposed to, okay, it's a bright day, sun's out, it's harsh, I can only photograph in one, maybe two directions. So with clouds, I can photograph 360 degrees around my subject. I can build contrast in post where I want it. So those are the conditions that I like to shoot in, and it came from early on when I was learning waterfall photography. So look at those pictures that inspire you from whatever photographer they may be, and really ask yourself, what about this picture appeals to me? Why do I find it exciting? Why is this picture one that I stop and look at rather than some other photographer's picture? I guarantee it's going to be the lighting or the conditions that they're shooting in. Now, when I do mentorships, a lot of my clients are striving to create a certain type of picture based on a photographer that they are familiar with. In some situations, it's me, and I'm not trying to brag, it's just that's how they ended up finding me for mentorships, because they enjoyed my photographs, and I really appreciate that. But they are having a hard time getting their pictures to look anything like mine. Has nothing to do with skill, has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with the conditions that they're going out in, because more often than not, photographers, especially at that hobbyist stage, are limited to being able to go out on weekends because, well, they have full-time jobs. Been there, done that. When you only have 2 days out of the week that you can go out, and you're having to balance that with things that you need to get done at home, yard maintenance, house maintenance, errands, all that good stuff, you don't have a lot of openings for being able to go out when weather conditions are perfect. So they go out on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever day they all have off during the week, and they take pictures of the same areas that I'm taking pictures using compositions that are similar, and it's not the same. And they feel like they're a failure. When in all actuality, for what they had control over at the time, their pictures are just as good as mine. I just had the ability to go out when the conditions were better. That's where they should be comparing themselves, instead of to me as a photographer, my compositional choices, the all-important settings on the camera, because heaven forbid we violate the settings of our favorite picture by 2/3 of a stop and shutter speed, because that's going to change everything. Settings mean nothing, by the way. But they're feeling let down because those things aren't panning out. But they actually are in most cases. It just really is they went out when the conditions were different. And if they looked at the pictures that they liked and saw, okay, this is the type of lighting that this photographer was working with, let me chase that light. That is when they're going to get closer to that type of photograph. And what's better is, and this goes into that whole imitation thing. When we're learning photography, we imitate others' work. That's just part of it. That's how we learn. But in time, we want to get away from that imitation. I forgot to turn the clock off, so bear with me. Usually I have the chime off. It brings back nice memories from childhood. It's my grandfather's clock. But short of the little chiming derailment we just had, imitation is something that as photographers we need to grow out of. We don't need to imitate compositions. We don't need to imitate how a picture is executed. And if we spend so much time trying to mimic other photographers, that becomes our style. It just is a mirror of somebody else that's already been out there. But if we pay attention to conditions and we compare our photos based on conditions, then we open up a whole new world. We bring our style in, how we see a scene, whether it be these grand scenes or we're more detail-oriented. Lens choice, all of that becomes us. How we like to have a photo set up, between shutter speed and depth of field, things like that, that becomes choices we make. But where we can make ourselves better photographers and get better photographs is by looking at the conditions of the pictures that really excite us. Then we go and seek those same conditions and then put our own spin whether it be the location that we happen to be in, our choice of composition, all those other things that go into a picture. But what drew us to wanting to photograph in the first place is usually the conditions that are being photographed, not the other stuff. So keep that in mind when you're scrolling social media, even looking at my pictures through all the blogs. Don't concentrate on the technical end. Don't concentrate on, okay, I need to do A, B, C, and D to get this same picture. Look at the picture. Look at the lighting. Look at the conditions that were being photographed. Was it just after a storm? Was it during a storm? Clear sky, blue day. Where was the sun? Was it early in the day, late in the day? Was it midday? All of those things matter more to your growth as a photographer or as a creative than learning the technical end. Because by the time you're getting to this point, you should have a grasp on the technical, and you should be wanting to move beyond the technical. And honestly, at this point, the technical aspects of photography are more or less second nature to me. I don't think through them anymore. I don't sit there and think, okay, I need to be at exactly f13 and 1/200th of a second or something. I don't think about that. I just think about the scene and how I need to render it. Do I need a lot of depth of field, a little bit of depth of field? Okay. Do I need to show motion? Do I need to cancel motion? And that's pretty much it. The settings are immaterial. I know the conditions that I like to photograph in. That's when I go out. That's when I feel inspired. There are conditions that I don't feel inspired with, and those are usually the clear blue sky days with the sunlight. It's too harsh for me. The shadows are too deep. I don't have the control in post like I would like, and I can shoot in those conditions and have plenty of times, but it's not as rewarding to me. And it's those conditions, it's the light that means so much more to me. And I honestly feel that that same consideration will change your photography. Let the technical stuff just happen. Photograph with a purpose at the time that's going to give you the conditions that you want. And it may mean, because you're working with a limited amount of time away from work and family, it may mean that you don't get the photos that you want as often as you would like to get them. You may have a scene in mind, you may have a great composition, and it takes a year or 2 years to get the right conditions at a time when you can go. But the photo that will result will be closer to what you imagined than if you go out in the wrong conditions and get everything else right. So don't compare photographs and photographers to you. See what you like about photographs and then deduce what the conditions were that they were shot in. Go with those conditions. That's the type of lighting that is going to inspire you. That's the type of lighting that is going to bring you to that next level in your own creative journey. So I hope you've enjoyed this month's Behind the Camera. And if you like this video format, let me know. I'm still toying with it here and there. I'm not giving up on my blog entries just yet. I still think that there's a value to them and having the written word. And I do like being able to sit down and read through things. I'm kind of old school that way. But I realize I need to change with the times, and a lot of what we're seeing online is video. I also want a chance for you guys to get to know me as a person, my mannerisms, how I talk, and that's a whole lot easier to do in video rather than in blog. The downfall is I don't get the opportunity to edit this over the course of a couple of weeks like I do with my typewritten blogs. I don't do video editing. All I'm using is a simple webcam on a really small um, flexible tripod sitting on my desk, and it's a one-shot thing. There is no cutting. Obviously, with the clock that chimed, I forgot to do that. That was my fault. I apologize. But I'm I'm just trying to make this real and about me, and the whole thing with behind the camera was to give you insight into me as a person, not just as a photographer. And I don't always want to put my absolute best foot forward. I want you to be able to see my goofs and my errors and my funnies. Um, and honestly, seeing me work through these videos unscripted and a just single run through, no retakes, that gives you an opportunity to see me. Um, and I'm okay with that. As a wabi-sabi photographer, I'm okay with things that are not perfect. I'm okay with there being beauty in all aspects. So hopefully these videos are entertaining and informative. But do drop a comment. Let me know if this is something that you like, want to see more of this type of behind the camera, or if you like the old blog posts. But don't forget, like, subscribe. I do a weekly Tuesdays tips here. We're wrapping up image editing, and I'm starting to get into some other tips that can help with your photography. I've just recently done one on how to achieve sharper images without spending an arm and a leg in different things. So keep this channel in mind. It's growing slowly, and I'm really happy for that. I thank all the ones that have subscribed to my channel so far, and hope there's many more. And we'll be back here or back in the blog again next month for another behind the camera, and I've got a couple more kind of planned out for this year, and we are getting towards the end of the year, so look for those. And come January 1st, we'll kind of wrap up everything that happened in 2024. And at least as of right now, this has been kind of a slow year for me. So that one should be kind of a quick and easy one to do. Of course, I always say that, and then 12,000 words later. But anyway, I will see you guys back here again next month. And until that point, happy shooting. And you know, if you're a photographer, definitely keep it up. We'll see you again next month. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.